Hello? The green light's on.
It is on? Okay, no.
Hello?
Hold on. Try with me.
Hello?
Yeah.
Is that better?
No.
No? A little bit more? 1, 2, there we are. Okay, I'm not sure I like where
And
it's
check mute,
positioned.
check the zoomers, make sure they.
Okay, and how about everyone on Zoom? Can they hear me? Can you wave? Let Marina know.
Can somebody go off?
Someone could click.
Oh, got a thumbs up from.
Oh, yay. Okay, good. We got a thumbs up. All right, I will start with the land acknowledgement. The town of Coburg respectfully acknowledges that we are located in the traditional and treaty territory of the Mississauga and Chippewa nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaty First Nations, which includes Curve Lake, Hiawatha, Alderville, Scugog Island, Rama, Bosalee, and Georgina Island First Nations. The town of Coburg respectfully acknowledges that the Williams Treaty First Nations have been stewards and caretakers of these lands and waters, and that today remain vigilant over their health and integrity for generations to come. We are all treaty people. Welcome to our annual meeting. Thank you for braving the storm and coming. That's so great. I'm pleased to have you all here in person, as well as everyone who's joining us on Zoom. And tonight, we're going to reflect on our accomplishments of 2024, and we're going to celebrate together our shared enthusiasm for nature, and we're going to choose our new leadership to fulfill our future plans. So, very exciting night. One of the privileges, of course, of being a paid member in good standing is your ability to vote at our AGM. So I trust you have all signed in. I hope I've checked your name off and renewed your membership with Chris. Marina, do we have quorum?
We have quorum.
Yay, we have quorum. Great. We were a little nervous at 7 when none of you were here, but I'm glad you're all here now. Okay, so we're going to be using a polling function on Zoom to engage all the online people. So each time that we ask for a motion to be carried, there will be a polling question for the online members that ask whether they agree or whether they're opposed. These results will come up live on the screen. In this room, don't look at the screen, no, just kidding. In this room, we would appreciate a show of hands. And whether you're online or in the room, if you kindly move first or second a motion, please state your name clearly so that we can have it accurately recorded. Okay? We all have a lot of things rambling around in our minds, and I wouldn't want to call anyone by the wrong name or get it incorrect in our records. And all of these things are going to take a few minutes, so be patient with us, please. My mic's sinking. Okay, all good, Marina? Okay, good. Our first official action is to make a motion to approve our AGM minutes of February 23rd, 2024. Can I have someone make this motion? Brian Maxwell will make this motion. Can I have someone second this motion? Richard Pope will second this motion. All in favor?
That's for the people on Zoom to vote.
The people on Zoom should be able to see a screen that they can vote.
There they go. So 8 out of 8. 9 out of 10.
Perfect. Anyone opposed? None? Carried. That works. That works. Well done. Well done. Thank you, Marina. That was great. Okay, Chris? I'm going to hand over to Chris to present our financial report.
Thank you, Whitney. Okay, do I have a slide? Well, we can't see it. Sorry.
Oh, no.
There we go. Close enough. Okay, I'm gonna jump right in. Okay, 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 2024 was another sound financial year for Willow Beach. We were able to cover all of our operating costs while still maintaining our charitable contributions, and we managed to end the year with a small surplus. You can find all of the details in the financial report that was included in your AGM package. So before I continue, does anyone have any questions about the financial statements that were sent out? I know it's very dry stuff, but okay, next slide then, please, Marina. So let's take a look at some of our charitable spending. Last year, we awarded a $1,000 scholarship to a Coburg Collegiate student named Jillian Thomas. We also issued 4 environmental grants of $500 each to local schools, which is 1 more than we usually provide. Next slide. Okay, in September, we sponsored a local high school student named Evan Cook for participation in the Youth Summit for Mother Earth. This is an annual event hosted by Ontario Nature, bringing youth together from around the province for 3 days of environmental workshops and hands-on outdoor learning. Next. Okay, we made our traditional donations to a variety of local nature organizations. And following the permanent closure of Kawartha Wildlife, we've added a new one to our list, the Foster Forest Wildlife Orphanage in Trenton. Next. All right, in late September, we were excited to purchase and install bird collision deterrent stickers on the windows at the Presqu'île Lighthouse Center. Maybe some of you have seen it. In return for our hard work, we were also given permission to install a small sponsorship sign in one of the windows, and that's what you see there on the right. We hope this effort will help to save the lives of many spring migrants as they arrive in the park over the coming months. And next slide. Okay, now I need to end with some official government business. All right, as a registered charity, we are required to follow the rules of the Ontario Not-for-Profit Corporations Act, or ONCA for short. So large charities with high revenue are required to have a chartered accountant conduct a full-scale financial audit or a review engagement with costs ranging from $2,500 to $10,000. Thankfully, our revenue is small enough that we are not required to do either of those things. However, we must secure the approval of our members with a motion to waive the need for an external review. So due to the exorbitant costs, and because our finances are very straightforward, with no property or debt, both myself and the board strongly recommend that you agree with this motion, which Whitney will be presenting to you shortly. So are there any last questions? I guess that's it. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, so the Willow Beach Board of Directors has reviewed the financial statements for 2024. We deem them to be complete and in compliance with standard practice. 2024, like Chris said, was a sound financial year, and the Willow Beach Field Naturalist Club does not have any financial liabilities. May I ask someone to please make a motion to accept our financial report for 2024? This is your chance to get like in the minutes. Big moment.
John Gale.
John Gale, can I have a seconder? Margaret Bain? All in favor? And the question for our Zoomer team? Okay, our team on Zoom can now answer the question. Looks good?
Yep.
Anyone opposed? Carried. As also mentioned by Chris, the Willow Beach Board of Directors feels that an external review engagement would be an unnecessary expense that can be waived if voted upon and passed by you, the membership. So, may I ask someone to please make a motion to waive the use of an external auditor?
Sure.
Yay! Roger Frost. Seconder? Richard Poe. All in favor? Wonderful. Oh, you're fast this time.
Get the hang of it. Okay.
Okay, anyone opposed? And that looks like it's carried. Thank you. President's report. So as I finish my term as president of the Willow Beach Field Naturalists, I must extend my gratitude to each and every one of you for your dedication to exploring, sharing, and preserving our natural world. To all the birders out there whose love and knowledge of our feathered friends lead us on outings and participate in bird counts and do citizen science. To those of you who come out to our general meetings and follow us on social media, contributing to our club fellowship, I thank you. You've all been generous through your donations and membership fees, and equally important, your volunteer time. 2 community projects are successfully being sustained by Willow Beach, including the Wesleyville Working Group, which supports land and social relationships, and the ongoing management of our beautiful Peters Woods. Our Curlew publication keeps us entertained, informed, and engaged. We have donated back, as you saw from Chris, to our local schools, to individual students, and to like-minded organizations. As a club, we've walked and talked and deepened our connection with nature and also to each other, and that makes our club truly exceptional. I've been privileged with a hardworking executive to which I'm truly thankful. I've been very proud to be your president, and I'm excited for the many great things that your new executive is going to achieve in 2025. Thank you for a good term. I appreciate it. Now I get to hand the mic over to Brian Maxwell, and he's going to do the next portion.
Can I? Probably easier. Let's pick it up.
You have to stay up here, though. You can't roll.
Slide it out this way.
This.
You need to be near this mic as well.
This might be split as it should go. Okay, well, that was fun. Which I think is really because of use of it all the time, just, learning how to pick up a mic. Every year, we ask for a motion to basically approve the actions of the executive in the previous year. This has 2 purposes, really, to thank them for all their work, but it's also to give a clean slate to the incoming executive board, so they have comfort in that there's no other issues outstanding that are going to come back and bug them in a particularly massive way. So, without further ado, I'm going to ask you, somebody to propose a motion to confirm the actions of the executive board since the last AGM on February 23rd, 2024. Have somebody to propose that, please? Okay.
Don Davis.
Yep. Ron Davis, and second, please. Okay, can't anybody try? Okay. All in favor? And anybody opposed? Carried. Okay, that was the easy one. Now we deal with getting the new board approved. There's a couple of changes to how we've done things in the past. This year, the board asked for.
Sorry to interrupt. Zoomers are saying you're not close enough to the mic,
Okay.
so can you make sure you're close to that
Okay.
or put it on the podium? To move this right here.
Better?
Yeah. I think.
Okay. There was a notice that went out asking for nominations for all the vacant positions with a deadline of December 1st, which is much earlier than we used to do. And fortunately, we had a lot of candidates come forward. The nominations committee then looked at the people that were willing and able and qualified, and I guess match made them with the positions available. As a background, there's a slight change this year. Our executive board used to have 12 people in it. It now has 11. This is because there was a change to the Ontario Not-for-Profit Corporation Act that required us to put a new constitution in place. And I think it was decided at that time that we did not need 2 vice presidents. So the position of second vice president was eliminated. You will see a second vice president referred to in last year's AGM minutes, but it's not there this time. All positions have a maximum duration of 2 years before they have to be approved by a vote, and this is what we're doing tonight. The nominations committee has basically put together this list of what the positions were like in the 2024 board and what they're proposing as a slate for 2025. And I think I'll just go over the very major changes here. Several people have kindly agreed to continue on to put themselves up for another term in their existing position. So I think I'll just refer to the new positions. We are proposing, or not we, the nomination committee is proposing that Matt Mayer take over from Whitney Lake as president, that Michael Maynard steps up from director to become a vice president. Frank Godfrey would get to have some extensive leisure time and step off the board, and he'd be replaced by Whitney as past president. And then we got 2 new directors, Anne Brightman, who's again been involved for a very long time with the club and deeply involved in the curlew, and Anne-Marie Jackson, who is a fantastic photographer, as you'll see, and has a most impressive resume. And that's what's right, and that is what is being proposed. All these people have been vetted. The information about their backgrounds was sent out in the AGM package in January, so everybody's had a chance to look at it. And I think the board, everybody who's looked at this is happy with the composition. So we're going to ask you to vote as a slate for all these candidates in one vote. Yes, John.
Brian, if any of these candidates are here, would they mind standing up and letting us see who they are? I don't know some.
Sure.
I think that's a reasonable request.
They're
Should we go through the whole thing?
Well, I mean, the ones that.
Okay, where do we start? Matt, do you want to stand up and wave? That is Matt. Okay. Michael. Here you are. With Michael. Just new ones or?
Well, everybody knows what it is.
Okay, Rita has standing again for secretary. Chris is standing again for treasurer. Whitney. Lindsay is standing again. As a director. And as a lot of control. I don't think Jenny is with us tonight, but she is standing again, correct?
Yeah, there is.
The 2 incumbents who are 1 year left in their term are Jerry McKenna and Richard Jordan.
They're not here.
They're not here. And Anne Marie is back there. So. Without further ado. Do we have a submitted proposal motion to confirm the slate of candidates as presented in this slide for election to the new executive board?
I can grab something.
Okay. Okay, can we have a seconder? Who gets there first?
Richard.
Richard, sorry. Okay, we'll get this ready.
Okay.
All in favor? Pretty good. Anybody opposed? I think it's officially carried.
Yep.
So we have a new executive board, and again, thank you very much for everybody who agreed to stand. Thank you for everybody who worked on assembling this board, and thanks again to all the last year's board for all the work they do. I know how much time this takes, so but I think it's worth it. So thanks again. And I believe that finishes the AGM portion of this meeting. So we now get to the more enjoyable part. I hope. But you don't quite get rid of me, I don't believe. Oh, but I have to introduce Elizabeth.
Okay, the sightings. We've done a little bit differently on the slides this time because of shortage of time, and we don't want this to take on too long. We don't want the speaker to be too late in joining us. So I'm going to, if anybody has anything that they want to contribute, please tell us. We do have some pictures from the outing on Sunday, so many of them by Anne Marie. Thank you. Yeah. So if anybody has anything unusual, Richard, I'm going to start with you for the harbor, because you've been keeping an eye on the harbor and you had a few different things today.
Nothing unusual. The pure white-winged Iceland gull that's been around off and on was there today and yesterday.
I'll speak it again, Richard, for the people on Zoom. The white-winged Iceland gull is in the harbor.
It's the one with the absolutely pure white wings. You know, some of them have that bit of gray, and this one's quite distinctive. Trumpeter swan, today there's a pair of hooded mergansers.
Trumpeter swan, hooded mergansers.
320 redheads today.
320 redhead. So the composition of ducks has changed a little bit.
Yeah, it was greater Scott until about a week. Now it's all redhead. And the ring-billed gulls have replaced the herring gulls.
So ring-billed gulls are
happening.
Yeah, Clive always used to report that kind of tongue in cheek, that the ring-billed gull population had increased because they migrate. Yeah. And so that's the harbor. Okay, these are pictures from the outing. Anne Marie's picture. This is a northern mockingbird. You could probably still see it. It was in a field just east of Port Britain. Among the multiflora rows, but you'd have to be on a good day, and the road is a little bit dangerous, so be careful to pull off and don't stand in the middle of the road when you're trying to see the birds. And also in the same field, oh, this was a different place. We had a huge flock of snow buntings on, I can't even remember where the road was. It probably was in Durham. It wasn't in Northumberland, but it was probably 1,000 snow buntings. They were on a barn flying around. It was really a great show until the snowplow came by. Horned larks, we didn't have quite as many of those, but we did see some. And the eastern bluebird, which was also in with the mockingbird field. Yeah, was in the same area as the mockingbird. So it's a fruit eater at this time of year as well. So you might be able to see them. They're out around Wesleyville, Port Britain. Yeah. And this was a treat. This barred owl, when we first saw it, was sitting on a branch right over the road. You couldn't have got a better look at a barred owl. Yeah, and It didn't like being the subject of our attention, so it did move on. But Anne Marie got a lovely shot. And this is Di's photo from the harbor, but we did see a bald eagle on Sunday. There have been, Di, as many as 3 hanging around the harbor, I think. Yeah,
Two adults.
2 adults and 1 immature, so, but you have to be there at the right minute, so you have to be prepared sometimes to sit a little while to see them, but they're in the harbor.
There were 2 adult bodies on Donald Road today,
2 adult bald eagles on McDonald Road today,
29.
so they're near 29, so that's just north of Peters Woods. And the rough-legged hawk we also saw in the outing. I don't think this picture was from the outing, but we did see one. Yeah, and this is in because I had at least 2 pictures of long-eared owls sent to me last week that were on people's deck railings. One in Port Hope and one in Coburg. Roger suggests that they might be a little bit pressed because of the deep snow, that they don't hunt super well in deep snow, but they're usually so nocturnal and they hide so well. But there they were, and there was photographic evidence that people weren't birders and didn't know what they were. But anyway, there they were. And next, but before I see you next time, we will probably have red-winged blackbirds and grackles. The only time we welcome grackles, and probably a few song sparrows as well. So things are changing, not just in the harbor.
Do I have to, oh, Brian.
There. Good spot. Richard could not be here tonight. He had a little appointment out of town, and so I am reporting on past outings, either of which I was at. There's good reason for the first one. Katsu's, I guess, annual outing, he often or usually leads an outing in February to either Algonquin Park or the Wolf or Amherst Island. Unfortunately, this year ran into a snowstorm, I guess, and had to be canceled. And I don't think he has a big window of opportunity to reschedule. So hopefully next year. So that didn't work out so well, but Roger tells me that last Sunday's outing, I think there were over 20 people, and you've seen the pictures. I think it was quite successful. My car was in the shop, couldn't be there. Sorry. But anyhow, we've got a bunch of ones coming up. The first one is a little bit different. It's next Tuesday. Is that Tuesday? I think it's right. I think it's 10 o'clock in the morning. It's just an outing to the Canoe Museum in Peterborough. We sometimes struggle to find different kinds of outings in the sort of in-between seasons. And this museum has been completely rebuilt over the last, I think, maybe 3 years. If you've been to it in the past, it used to be in the Evanwood Center, and it's now next to the park on Ashburn Drive. And anyhow, nothing, it's just a group of us going up, have to pay the regular admission, but it's a pretty major museum, very Canadian thing to do in the winter. So I think they would like to, Tom or Jenny would like to know in advance just how many people we can expect. But I think, again, for $20, I think roughly the admission is, but they expect to be up there for a good 2 hours. I know there's a cafe on site and
Restaurants nearby.
yeah, lots of restaurants nearby and everything else. So that's the little cultural outing. Then Roger is leading a waterfall outing March 23rd to Preston. Then April 3rd, we're doing a Zoom primer on using Merlin, the app Merlin. This is, I guess, sort of a repeat of what we did last year. It was more in depth on Merlin, but not covering iNaturalist. And Merlin has transformed the sort of made birding more accessible to many people who weren't doing this before, people like me. who are pretty crummy as birders, but have found Merlin to be extremely helpful. So anyhow, that's something to look forward to. It have to be done from home, even on a rainy day. We have a work party that is scheduled for, I don't think we have a fixed date yet. This is maybe could be looked on as something Little Beach is doing in honor of Earth Day, which is the 22nd. But there's been a lot of garbage, I guess, dumped in ravines over the past in certain sensitive areas of the Wesleyville ravines. And with the cooperation of the landowners and the security company that is trying to keep the trespassers out of there, we will have a work party to go in there and try and do some refuse removal. I think Jenny is working on the details on this, so this is a sort of a feel-good spring cleanup. Spring ephemerals, this is something that I hoped to make happen last year, except I sort of messed up on the dates. So I now know that they were supposed to be earlier than I was ready for. I think it'll be either possibly the very end of April, but more likely the first week or two of May. It'll be I think a short notice outing in Proctor Park in Brighton, just looking at what is growing in the woods. So that's something a little bit different. And outing in May. Too much information on this right now. Do you?
It'll be for beginner birders. Other birders are welcome to come, but we will be specifically working with beginner birders to get them more comfortable using binoculars and learning easy identification tips and so on. So it'll be really good for people that are just starting out, but there'll be lots of birds, so it'll be good for all birders.
And that is the near-term list. If anybody has any ideas about other outings they would either, well, maybe like to lead, but also just things that we should be doing that we're not doing. If you have ideas, come and talk to me after the meeting, and I'll see if I can remember to write them down. Ready?
Thank you, Brian. Okay, introduce the speaker. Is Christian? Is he there? Is he?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Hi, Kristen.
Hi.
Christian. Okay, so tonight, Christian Artuso presents an introduction to shorebirds of our region, starting with an overview and then covering their incredible migrations, life history traits, and conservation concerns. He will focus on field identification, especially in breeding plumages, in preparation for spring migration of the species that are found in our region. Christian is of Italian descent, his father's parents coming as settlers to the land of the Haudenosaunee in Montreal. He experienced and acknowledges the privilege of having traveled and lived on 5 continents, speaking French, English, Italian, Spanish, Mandarin, and Anishinaabe-Moan. 2 enduring passions, language and birds. For as long as he can remember, Christian has loved wildlife. Unfortunately, he was mocked for bird watching as a child, his peer group viewing bird watching as something quite weird. That's unfortunate. That's an unfortunate truth, Christian. But know that tonight, this group all has binoculars in their cars. Okay, you're safe to share, and they all share your enthusiasm for bird watching, as well as we have some really great photographers in the club. Christian completed a PhD in the environment and geography in Manitoba in 2009, with a focus on Winnipeg's eastern screech owls. He then initiated the province-wide Golden-Winged Warbler Survey and Chimney Sweep Initiative. SWIFT. Yeah, you got me, Roger, SWIFT. He was hired by Bird Studies Canada as Manitoba's program manager, tasked with coordinating the Breeding Bird Atlas of Manitoba, which was completed and published in 2019. Today, he lives in the unceded Algonquin territory of Ottawa, working for the stewardship of migratory birds with the Canadian Wildlife Services. Take it away.
Thank you. Sorry for the long introduction. I maybe should have shortened that a bit. Hang on one second while I share my screen. I only have. Sure. Oh yeah. Okay. I have to stop. I'll have to stop you sharing your screen. It might take 1 second. You might see yourself for a second. And hopefully you see my screen now.
Yep.
And hopefully my sound is okay.
Yep, I think you're good.
Yeah, everyone in the room? Okay, so thanks very much. I'm going to talk about shorebirds and a little bit about shorebirding. We'll focus mostly on ID tonight, and we'll focus mostly on spring plumages, since you know, it feels like spring's on the way, and these birds, it won't be too long before it's May, and many of these birds are back. So this is the overview part of the talk. I want to introduce to you the concept of what a shorebird is. Of course, we call them shorebirds here, just in case we have any folk from across the pond in the room. You might refer to them as waders, but it's just a difference in use of terminology. There's actually 14 different families of shorebirds. People might be surprised by that fact. And there's over 200 species around the world. The sort of the definition of them is they are the families in the order Pteridriformes that are not webbed-footed, so not including the gulls, the Jaegers, and those type of families. The ones that have completely webbed feet. Most shorebirds have limited webbing or a little bit of webbing, like for example the ones that have semi-palmated in their name. That refers to that little bit of webbing. So most of them are long-legged. I'm sure you know this. Most of them, we tend to think of them as being on the ground. However, they actually do spend time in trees. And the ones that we're most familiar with are the plovers and the sandpiper families. But just for a bit of fun, I do want to broaden your horizons a little bit. So I'm just going to show you real quick some of the other shorebird families. So oyster catchers. If you get to our coasts, you might get to see oyster catchers. Of course, you won't see them in the region here, but another family of oyster catchers. And hopefully the screen is displaying well enough you can see what it says on the bottom. 12 species worldwide and mostly coastal in nature. There's the Jassanas. I know some people just see these in the bird guide and they might pronounce it Jacana, but it's actually Jassana, and that's a CCD. Comes to us from indigenous languages of South America via Portuguese. And Jassanas are 8 species worldwide and tropical species, and have some super interesting features and behavior. One of them is they are polyandrous, meaning the females select multiple male partners and the males do all the work of incubating and caring for the chicks. And the females may even defend territories from other females. And they have these incredible toes, and they like walk on water, and it looks like they're walking on water. Of course, they're using the vegetation near the surface, but they're quite extraordinary families. Thickneys, you don't have to go too far south into Mexico before you see this, the double-striped thickneys. So another pantropical family, just to give you a little bit of variety here. There's actually a bunch of shorebird families that only have one member. So here's an example of that. Egyptian plover, the famous crocodile bird Herodotus wrote about, a family of just one. There's some cool families, also some other polyandrous families, or families where the females are more brightly colored than males. So here's the painted snipes. Despite the name snipe, they're a different family. And this bird here is a female, and this bird here is a male. I'm hoping you can see my cursor as I move it. Yep. And also, folks, do feel free to chime in as we go. I mean, if you want, you can wait to the end with a question, but if there's anything pressing, I don't mind. And then some families you just would have no idea that they're shorebirds if you looked at them. The button quail are an example of that. They're technically shorebirds. They're also polyandrous. The female, this is the female here, and this is the male in front. The females are more colorful in a bunch of shorebird families, and there's a bunch of polyandry behavior even in our families that we're familiar with here. Seed snipe, uniquely South American family of only 4 species being examples as well. So a little bit about just some generalities. Mostly we think of shorebirds as an open habitat. Of course, with that name, we mostly think of them in shoreline, but there's a bunch of shorebirds that nest in grasslands. This kudos if you identify things without me pointing them out. So if you recognize the upland sandpiper here, you've done well. I mean, we think of these type habitats mostly, and if anybody is really good and can spot the special species in the bottom photo, you'll get a gold star from me, which I'll mention in just a minute. And they're also on rocky coastline, like these purple sandpipers here. And a lot of them perch in trees, especially when they're coralling territorially. This is a greater yellowlegs in a large boreal fin standing on top of the tree. And that's it's actually pretty typical. If you were to go to a place like, for example, excuse me, Churchill, Manitoba, you'd see all sorts of shorebirds sitting in trees. Everything from least sandpipers up to Hudsonian godwits and whimbrels. So this photo is not from North America, although you might recognize the dunlin and some of the species that co-occur. But if you spotted that was a spoon-billed sandpiper, one of the rarest birds in the world and one of the most famous shorebirds in the world, then well done. All right. The other thing about shorebirds is they are extraordinary migrants, absolutely amazing migrants. They have some of the longest migrations in the world. They might not be as long as, say, an Arctic tern going from the Arctic to the Antarctic, but they're pretty damn close. And the thing about shorebirds is they cannot rest on the water, on the ocean, really. They are also not capable of flying like a raptor would using thermal currents to soar. So they are going flapping flight nonstop in some cases, in some extreme cases from Alaska all the way to New Zealand, with pretty much nowhere to stop in between. And judging by the sum of their tracks, we've actually recorded, for example, bar-tailed godwits going from New Zealand to China with 8 days non-stop flight. So some of those birds with advanced trackers. And these are bar-tails here. And then this is the red knot here. This is 99% of the photos in this presentation are my own photos. If you see a web page, then it's not mine, and there's a reason for it. In this case, that's B9. She is often referred to as the moonbird. She's a red knot, and she has done this migration from the Arctic to. Sorry, should I?
Yeah, I don't think we have the right slide up right now. We're on the one with the upland sandpiper still.
Oh, interesting. Okay, does it change now?
Yeah, it's good. Oh, now you're, yeah.
Okay, now I've gone too far. Okay, sorry, maybe a lag. So just let me know.
The one that you're showing now has the migration paths on it.
Okay, so this is the one I was just talking about. So I was talking about these bar-tailed godwits going trans-Pacific from Alaska to New Zealand. And then in the spring, they do the East Asian flyway. So they go from New Zealand to China nonstop. and then up and around. And then I was talking about B9. Here she is, a red knot. This is her sort of breeding grounds up here in the Canadian Arctic, and she's going to Tierra del Fuego in the southernmost tip of South America, the island off the southern coast. So she has been to the moon and back, actually more than she's traveled greater than the distance of Earth to the moon. And I don't know if she's doubled that now, but she has been back and forth from the Canadian Arctic to Tierra del Fuego so many times that she's traveled the distance from more than the distance from Earth to the moon. So they're just extraordinary migrants. Hopefully the slide changed just then.
Yes.
Okay, so a little bit about some size and some generalities. The smallest in the world is the least sandpiper at 15.5 grams and approximately 13 centimeters from head to toe. So you all know least sandpiper, and you know there's a bunch of others that are very close, like semi-palmated and least are pretty similar, but technically least is smaller. Probably that's how it gets the name. And then the big ones, well, you might, if you go out west, see something like a long-billed curlew, but technically the largest is the far eastern curlew, which is 63 centimeters and 860 grams, so a little less than a kilogram, which for a bird, remember, this bird also travels from eastern Siberia to Australia. So weight is not something that you want to possess in spades if you're a shorebird. Other cool facts about shorebirds. I'll try to mix in a little bit of biology here for you. Shorebirds are quite unique in that they have a fixed clutch size. They always lay 4 eggs, and that's actually quite unusual amongst birds. So there's a killdeer nest in the bottom left here. As I mentioned, they're also a bit unusual in the bird world in that there's a lot of polyandrous species. So well done if you identified the red-necked phalarope in the top right. Also well done if you knew that our spotted sandpiper is also polyandrous. So there are polyandrous species like the spotted sandpiper that have no plumage distinction, so they're not dichromatic. And then there are others like the phalaropes that are both polyandrous and also dichromatic, meaning they also have a difference in male and female plumage, with the females being the bright ones. And then I just want to show a few more things about, before we get into IDing them, just some fun facts. The bills of the shorebirds are actually a lot softer than you might think, and they do have some tactile, some sensibility, so they can feel in the mud when they're probing in the mud. They do have it. They do have their. And so this is a shot of a pectoral sandpiper, or 3 pectoral sandpipers. And if you see the bird in the back, you'll notice the bill on a pectoral sandpiper normally curves down, and the lower mandible of this bird certainly curves down. But I wanted you to notice the upper mandible in this particular posture is actually curving up. And it's just to show you a little bit of the flexibility in those bills. So they look hard and bony, but they're not quite as stiff as you might think. And then I'm sure everybody knows about this type of behavior, killdeer being a very famous example of this, but also others in the plover family. This is a distraction display. This killdeer is trying to lead me away from her babies or her eggs by flashing off her bright red rump and pretending that her wings are broken, and she will lead me away, either pretending one wing is broken or possibly both. Again, the rump and the fan tail really trying to make herself as visible as possible to lead a predator away from her nest. So you probably encountered this with killdeer at some point. The other thing about shorebirds is they're crazy flocks. They're sometimes just so poetic to watch. People use a fancy word, murmuration, for when birds flock together really tightly and seem to move together like they're one. These photos are of semi-palmated sandpipers in the Bay of Fundy. Of course, it's a very famous stopping point for semi-palmated sandpipers. Anyway, you can see their flock. They're actually balled up against a peregrine falcon coming in here, and so just to sort of show you how they move. And the other thing I love watching with these flocks is the dark backs tend to contrast with the pale underparts. So when they turn, you get like a flash of white, and when they turn the other way, they look dark. So it really can be quite mesmerizing to watch those flocks move in and out. All right, hopefully you've seen a pectoral sandpiper now on screen with a very large polychaete worm dripping from its mouth. Because they're also fun to watch feeding for these reasons. I mean, some of them are feeding on very small stuff and you can't even see it, including biofilm. Others are pulling up some pretty chunky worms from the substrate. So here's a pectoral sandpiper illustrating that behavior. And other interactions, when you see them in flocks, there's often lots of fun behavior to watch as well there. Or bathing, these type of behaviors. Here's a white-rumped sandpiper. You can actually see the white rump because the way the wings are raised off the body in this case. And so great fun. Now, unfortunately, the next slide is not so positive because our shorebirds are in trouble, generally speaking. And this, I'm guessing you know about this publication. This is the latest version of the State of Canada's Birds Report 2024. Just came out last year. Actually, just came out at the end of last year, so it's not very old at all. This one is specific to Canada. There's also often one that's for the whole continent. Anyway, you can see shorebirds here are one of the we sometimes use the word guild, meaning a group of birds that share some common traits. And shorebirds are definitely one of the groups that are in some trouble. And so our estimate is that overall, since 1970, they've lost 42% of their total population. Now, again, that's multiple species combined into the group. It's not one species, but it is a large decline. I will say the one caveat, though, is that the shorebird data is tricky. It's tricky to interpret, in part because, for example, all the Arctic nesting species, there's not too much, it's not easy to survey them on the nesting grounds. And a lot of them are going to South America and places where they're not necessarily easy to survey on the wintering grounds. So most of our data tends to come from the migration pathway, but that's really hit and miss because anything can happen. You know, they can be here one day and gone the next. You could have a peregrine falcon in the area half an hour before you show up to do your survey and all the birds are gone. Like it is a bit tricky to monitor on migration. And then, of course, in the coastal sites, you've got the tides and things like that. But in other areas, you've got seasonal changes in water levels in wetlands and so on. So I will say it is tricky, but the data does not look good. Like it does look like a pretty serious decline. Not quite as much as our grassland birds. They are definitely, their data is really strong, and that decline is really, really steep indeed. And others like waterfowl and raptors for different reasons are on the increase. Raptors, for example, recovering from DDT. Anyway, I'm focusing on the shorebirds here, so I won't go through all of those groups. All right, so the rest of the talk, I'm going to take you through the three families that occur in this area. That's the plovers, the sandpipers, and then avocets and stilts are a family of their own too. Not common here though, but I'm going to include them. I'm going to go through 5 of the common occurring plovers, or the regularly occurring plovers, I should say. I've got more than 20 species of sandpiper to talk to you about, so this could take a while. And I'll mention one avocet and one stilt at the end, and I might even throw in a slide or two about some rarities. And the way the talk is organized is I'm going to start with the plovers, then the sandpipers, than the avocets and stilts. I'll start with the largest and work towards the smallest. As I said, I'll focus on the breeding plumages. And it won't be absolute largest to smallest because I'll group things like the two godwits together and the two yellow legs together and things like that. So it'll enable a bit of a better comparison. And so let's start by introducing the plover family. So we've got 5 species we're going to talk about today. And just for kicks, because birders do like rarities, I will mention 3 rare plovers. So this family is called Shorebirds, and you might recognize that from the order Shorebirds. They include a lot of birds that have the name plover, but also the ones that are called lapwings, and also the ones that are called dotterels. And the dotterel is actually an example of a polyandrous species. The Eurasian dotterel, I should say, is an example of a polyandrous species. We got 69 species in the world and 7 in Canada. As you can see from this photo of a killdeer, they have quite large eyes, and their bills are relatively short and sort of a bit dagger-like. So this killdeer has got a nice juicy cricket. And is that someone with a question or just a bit of feedback there?
Just feedback.
Okay, and they actually do a lot of feeding by sight. They do a lot of picking and at the surface. They will probe, but they also do catch things like crickets by running after them and grabbing them. So this is in the plover family. This is a common form of behavior and part of the reason for their short bills and large eyes. We'll compare them with sandpipers in a minute, which tend to have long bills and focus more on probing into soft substrate. Part of the reason killdeers are also happy foraging in a gravel parking lot, where you would not see too many sandpipers doing that. So they are, as a family, I put a few little statistics. Actually, I didn't get a chance to update these. These are from last year, but 73% are not at risk. There are a few species that are at risk. And we'll talk about the piping plover being our example. So now we start with the species. I think killdeer, I think everyone knows how to ID a killdeer. It's quite large. It's 27 centimeters. You've got all this written in the top corner of the slide too. And with that famous double breastband and the really classy stripy face with that red eye ring, I think killdeer is an easy one. I already mentioned the rufous rump. That's also a very obvious distinct feature, and often their habitat too. You'll find them on lawns and parking lots and things like that. You know, they might even annoy some people when they want to nest in a place where you want to hold the concert. So they're a familiar bird, and I think easy to identify. Although one little trick, I've included range maps on everything, so just to give you the bigger picture again. So really, killdeer is quite widespread. It does go farther north than most people realize, and it winters down into North and South America. So it's not such a long distance migrant compared to others. And one little ID trick is the baby killdeer only has one breastband. So just in case you see a one breast and you think it's a semi-palmated plover or something, well, if it's super fluffy, it might be a killdeer. So one little ID trick there. And I just clipped out my photo there so you could see that a bit better. All right, and black-bellied plover is actually also very large. Technically, it's slightly larger than the killdeer, but I grouped it this way so I could compare it with the golden plover next. So it's about 29 centimeters. It's a very
We're still on killdeer.
All right, let's try this. Tell me when she's up. No? Bit of a lag, eh? That's too bad. I'm gonna go back. Still not coming? Still not changing?
No.
I wonder if Marina has the PDF available. If this is going to become a repeat problem, we might need her to share the screen instead of me. I sent her a PDF just in case.
Yeah, I'll pull it up. Hold on one sec.
And meanwhile, if it does change, let me know. I'll do this for as long as I can. Actually, maybe I'll tell you what, I'm gonna stop sharing and then I'm gonna start again. Let's try sharing again. Okay. Okay. So I will try sharing my screen again. And hopefully, is that any better?
No.
No. So what do you
No,
see?
nothing right now. It hasn't come up yet. So I can share the PDF if you want to do it that way.
Yeah, so just advance it to the slide that says black-bellied plover. It's a photo of a black-bellied plover standing in the water. And it says black-bellied plover in the top left corner.
PDF.
And I will stop sharing. Yeah, keep going. And there you go. Good. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, so you'll just get all of the information at once this way, but that's fine. I might miss some of the animation. So a very big plover. Notice that silvery color. Actually, it's funny because we call them black-bellied plover, which I think is kind of silly because American golden plovers also have a black belly. The Brits call them gray plover, which in wintertime they do look very gray. But such a gorgeous bird. So my proposal is that we should call them platinum plover. Also because I like the alliteration. But anyway, this large bird with very striking black, white, and silver pattern, this white band up around the black face. Another really useful mark when they fly is the black armpits. That's a really good way to tell them apart from American golden plover. That's really useful in the fall when they don't look quite so dapper, but it's good at any time of year. And there's the range for you, just to show this is a real high Arctic nester, and they are coming through our area only on migration. All right, if you advance the next one for me, and then I will talk about American golden plover. So the American golden plover, as hopefully you can see here, this is actually a pair. There actually is a little difference, male-female. Male bird is in front, female bird in back, but it's a subtle difference, and they have that golden back. Although I will say it's a subtle sort of gold color, sort of a greenish yellow, and some people might be a bit surprised that bird is called a golden plover. It might look more gray to you than gold, but there are actually 3 species around the world called golden plovers, and this is our American golden plover. This is a grassland. Well, in migration, they're often in grasslands, and in the tundra, in the nesting area, they're often in sort of gravel and open habitats like you see them here in this photo. So the general color scheme is quite similar to the black-bellied plover, but again, it's the different coloration in the back, and that white band around doesn't go as far down. So, and the next slide, I think, will give you a little, just a little winter comparison. Unfortunately, Unfortunately, it's not going to show them with the animation, but I wanted just to compare the structure of the birds for you here. So I took the liberty of using fall photos. So that's a gray plover on my right. It might be your left. I'm not sure how this translates. And an American golden plover. And you can see the dainty bill and the softer, daintier body shape of the golden plover versus that really robust chest and really robust bill of the black-bellied plover. Larger size as well, if you see them close up. So I just wanted to illustrate that structural difference as well as the plumage difference, because it is useful. And sometimes the color can fool you, especially on young birds, which young birds of both species can look quite buff. And so the color would be tricky at that point. All right, and on to the next slide. So getting a bit smaller now, down in 18 centimeters, we have our semi-palmated plover. This is a bit of a bit more subarctic than Arctic. They nest into the Arctic, but they also nest in northern Ontario, like around James Bay, for example. And they come a bit further south than this map might even suggest. So pretty easy to tell by their smaller size. You're only one breast band compared to a killdeer, so that shouldn't be too hard. Also, they're not nesting here, they're just only here in the migration season. And then that combination of the orange legs and the orange bill base is quite distinct. And then that, I call it a bridle. I don't know if that's a good term to use, but the black marking that goes over top of the forecrown and around the top of the bill looks a bit like a bridle on a horse to me, however you want to describe it there. So that's our semi-palmated plover. It is similar to this guy, the piping plover, but the piping plover is quite rare. The piping plover does nest in your area, and I know it's a big deal. It's such a big deal that you probably don't even notice that on the range map. The range map sort of looks like you have, it doesn't really show the Great Lakes because they've become quite rare around the Great Lakes. But one little interesting tidbit to note is that there's the interior population of piping plovers, which is one subspecies. And then there's the Atlantic coastal population, which is a different subspecies. They are listed under the Species at Risk Act separately, but they're both endangered. So we call that a DU, a designatable unit. And there are actually, technically speaking, two listings for piping plover, the Atlantic coast birds and the interior birds. Just so happens that they have the same rank of endangered, which I've abbreviated here as EN. And so this is obviously an extremely rare bird, and usually you're going to a specific place to look for them, which is wide sandy beaches. They have a very pale color. I don't know if you could flash quickly back to semi-palmated and then come back here. Just that brown of the semi-P versus the much sandier color. And then I also want you to note that they do have the black across the top of the head, but they don't have that full bridle. The face is quite pale. And the lores, I hope you know what I mean by lores, since I can't use my cursor. It's that space between the eye and the base of the bill. So the lores are all white. So they don't have that black band there either. And then they do have that one breast band like a semi-P as well. So they are, and they do also have orange legs, and they do also have an orange bill base. So the general scheme, the general color scheme and the general plumage scheme is quite similar, but it's a much paler bird with a much plainer face, and it's also much rarer. However, if it's in the middle of summer and you're seeing a small plover like this, when the semi-palmated should be in the north, then perhaps you've got our precious piping plover. And I'm not going to talk about it too much here today, but I'm sure that there are guardians programs and opportunities to volunteer for watching the nests when they are nesting in your area. We usually set things up for people to guard them and keep dogs away and pedestrians away and so on when they nest. I was involved in that work in Manitoba for a long time. All right, we can move on. One more slide on plover is just a few rarities that occasionally show up, just in case you're one of those birders who likes a rare stray blown in. So the northern lapwing occasionally shows up here. The snowy plover occasionally shows up here, and the Wilson's plover very occasionally will show up on the Great Lakes as well. The lapwing, of course, is wandering from across the pond. It's a Eurasian species. It nests both in Asia and Europe. The snowy and Wilson's plovers are more southern species that occasionally come north. So I just mentioned those for the sake of completion. And we can move on next to the sandpiper family. So this is a much bigger family. 97, it might be 100 now with splits, but we have 35 in Canada. They are really a very migratory family. Most of these species are migratory. The plovers, I forgot to mention, some of the tropical ones are not migratory. They're resident. But the sandpipers, they really like to nest in the temperate zones and migrate. And even some of the ones in the southern hemisphere are what we call austral migrants. So they'll nest in the southern cone and then migrate north in winter. Again, as I mentioned, the red knot and the bar-tailed godwit, these birds have some of the just the most amazing long-distance migrations. There are even a few, like the red-necked phalarope, that become pelagic in the non-breeding season. A red phalarope and red-necked phalarope spend a lot of time on the ocean when they're not breeding. They have diverse mating systems, and there's even several nocturnal members of this family. I'll mention the woodcock, for example, a bit of a crepuscular sandpiper. So I've got 27 to go through, so I probably better step on the gas a little bit here. But there are definitely some threatened and endangered ones, and so we'll mention them as we go. And there's actually a bunch in the works. So next, if you don't mind, please. Starting big, we start with the marbled godwit, a very large sandpiper at 46 centimeters, very big. The godwits have the upturned bill, 4 species in the world, 2 of them here, and they get the name godwit from the call godwit, which most of them have a call. It's kind of a bit like that. And so this is our marbled godwit. As you can see from the map, it's not really a local nester. It's mostly a prairie nester, and that's why I chose the photo that I did. Unfortunately, because I don't have the animation, the photo is covered, and you can't see that marbled godwit hanging out in the grassland, but you can see a bit of the grassland. And I didn't think to separate them out in the PDF, did I? I should be cleverer next time. And then here's one on a fence post in a large community pasture. So it's also quite obviously a grassland. But there is a James Bay nesting population. There's actually also an Alaska population, like right away over west, probably just slightly outside of the map. But the James Bay birds do sometimes migrate through our area, so they are one to be aware of. And they're possible here in migration. So that the rich buffy color, the very large size, the bill with the bicolor, the sort of the orange base but mostly black, and of course the upturned bill of a godwit is your first giveaway. And if you hit next, hopefully, oh, it doesn't do it. Okay. Well, I had a photo I think is covered up, which shows the underwing of the marbled godwit, or maybe it's to come, which shows them. They have this really rich buffy underwing pattern, and that is also a super useful that is also super useful in identifying them. So just apologies for that, for the technical glitch there. But they have a really rich, buffy underwing, and it's a very useful feature. This is the Hudsonian godwit, which is a smaller godwit. It has also a bicolored upturned bill, although it usually has more orange at the base. It's got a smaller size and this really brick red, as opposed to that cinnamon buff color of the marbled godwit. If you can see on that insert there, their underwing pattern is black and white with a big stripe. And that is quite a useful field mark too, is their wing pattern. I'll talk about that a bit more later. But they are definitely very distinct in flight. They got like a white rump and a black and white stripe on the wing as well. They, you can see their range here. They're super interesting. It sort of looks like a disjunct nesting distribution. We're not necessarily quite sure, but they nest, for example, around northern Manitoba, around Churchill, and then they're going probably where the name Hudson, referring to Hudson Bay, I think, and then they're going down to southern South America. And this was fairly recently added, recommended by Kasiewicz for listing as threatened. So this is now considered a threatened bird. That hasn't quite passed on to Schedule 1 of the Species at Risk Act yet, but that should normally happen. So if you move on, it should be the whimbrel next, I assume. And so unlike the godwits with their upturned bill, the whimbrels have the downturned bill. They are a member of the curlew group, the Numenius genus, or the curlews. They are just super cool birds. They're very brown cryptic pattern. I think they're pretty distinct though, despite the overall brown, the head stripes and the down curved bill and the fairly large size, I think makes them quite distinct. They do definitely migrate through our area, and I even put some tracks of some of the birds that are being tracked there, and so you can see that they come through eastern Ontario, and there are quite a few whimbrel watches around where people are looking for them, counting them. Jump in if you want to say something.
It's the symbol of our club.
There you go. Should have checked that first, eh? Okay. Yeah. So I'm guessing you do a whimbrel watch as well, and you don't need me to tell you about whimbrel, but you may not get to see them on the breeding grounds the way I have got to see them. So a little fun tidbit: the bird in this photo is doing what we sometimes call the mouse run, which is also a distraction. So she's got eggs somewhere nearby. She's also trying to lead me away from her eggs. All right, so we can move on. Obviously, you've got the whimbrel down pat, and the willet is the other one too. This also, like the puffing plover, has a prairie nesting and Atlantic coast nesting. So they're different subspecies in the salt and the saltwater side on the coast versus the inland side. And they look a little bit different, though not much. But as you can see from the yellow, they do come through the Great Lakes region sometimes. So they're always one to be on the lookout for. They're just a very gray bird, but when they open up their wings, like in that photo, you'll see that big, thick black and white stripe. Unfortunately, the photo is covered. The left-hand side of that photo compares the Hudsonian godwit, which has a thin white stripe. The willet is a really distinct black and white stripe, and they use that when they're displaying. Actually, it's quite fun to watch. They like to fly around calling "Pill willet" and then displaying those black and white wings. So the bird transforms from gray into something super dynamic. Fun to watch on the nesting grounds, at least. Here, though, you'll get them in migration, and you need to be a little bit lucky, not super common. All right, next. Getting a little bit smaller, though not much. We've got the greater yellow legs now. And I'll do the two yellow legs together. The greater yellow legs, as I showed one in a tree earlier, is sort of a pan-boreal nester. If you use that term very broadly, a little bit broad strokes, a little bit loosely. So here's our greater here. Quite a distinctive pale base to the bill and quite an upturn on the bill. The very yellow legs is another good field mark. But probably the best way to talk about this is to compare them. So let's go to the lesser for a second, and then we'll come back to the comparison. So the lesser, you should probably notice the same general color pattern, but a shorter bill. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Hopefully it comes up as a slide. The lesser yellow legs was recently added to Kasiwik as threatened. It has a bit of a different distribution. It's actually a bit more western as a nesting species, but then it migrates to the Caribbean. So it comes through here very regularly in migration, coming through eastern Ontario and eastern North America very regularly. And it too is sort of often nesting in tree habitats or around big bogs and fens, and you often also hear them and see them on the top of trees in the nesting season. But you should also notice the all black bill of the bird. So notice that's all. If you could flip quickly back to greater for the pale base, it's sort of yellowish base or at least pale gray. So there's a bit of contrast in the bill, and now back to lesser. It's usually pretty solid black or pretty solid dark. And it usually doesn't have that contrast in the bill. And the next slide, hopefully, is a comparison of the bill length. We cover it. The photo in the back is the two together. So the size difference when they're standing beside each other is really obvious. And the only hard part is when you got one by itself. But the birders will use this ratio of, if it's 1 to 1.3 between the gape, the line at the base of the bill for the gape to the tip versus the length of the head, it's going to be a lesser, and greater is usually a ratio of 1 to 1.6 or greater. That's easy to say and it looks fantastic. It's not necessarily easy to measure in the field, so don't use it as a guide and as a thumb if you want, and you can sometimes use it in photographs if you know how to measure from a photograph, but be very careful with that because photographs, if it's on an angle or a slightly different angle, can really change that. Like if you got foreshortening, if the bird was looking towards the lens, for example, the bill would look much shorter than it really is, for example, and the other photo effects. So photographers in the room will know that photos sometimes lie. Well, they're not actually lying, but they're deceptive at times. So just be a little bit careful of that. And I'm sorry for making this PDF this way. I should have first separated out everything onto separate slides so that the animation wouldn't be lost. Anyway, we can carry on. And somebody give me some sort of time sense if I'm really long in the tooth here, and you need me to hurry up.
Christian,
yeah.
we are coming up on 9 o'clock.
Okay.
So so I think that gas pedal needs to be pressed a little bit harder, please.
What's the total time again? When do we have to wrap it up?
Probably within the next 10-15 minutes.
Okay. Okay. All right. So upland sandpiper. A grassland bird, very distinctive with that small head and big eye, straight blackish bill, though with a little bit of yellow at the base and the long yellow legs, quite distinctive. Amazing call. They do nest in the area, but you got to find good pasture land to find them. They go all the way to the Pampas of South America, and they're actually they're quite a local mascot down there for some of the conservation issues down there. If you go next, then we have our two dowitchers. This is our short-billed. Our short-billed was very recently recommended for threatened, at least in the designatable unit that occurs here. The one on the The far west of the map there, called Carinus, is recommended for endangered. It's that peachy coloration overall with a straight black bill, and it really feeds like a sewing machine. And they have a straight white stripe up the back as well. That's quite distinctive. So we can go to the next slide. We'll sort of compare them a bit. The long-billed is very similar. So this is one of the real shorebird challenges. Is there any text on the bottom of that? You
Yes.
see? Okay.
Yeah.
So just very quickly, some marks to look for on the short bill. Look for the spotted breast sides versus the more barred breast sides of the long-billed. Look for the more, I would call it a more brick red color on the long-billed, a bit more like a Hudsonian godwit, and I would call the short-billed a bit more salmon colored. But I know color is definitely subjective. And then if you zoom in, hopefully the next photo, one more, will show the back a bit. The scaling on the feathers, the back. The really buffy tips on short-billed. Long-bills have this black and white pattern with the wider tips, and that too is a useful field mark. So you can see the barred breast versus the spotted, and the redder tones and the white tips on the back of the bird. And then you can move quickly to woodcock. I mean, I won't talk much about woodcock for ID because it's such a distinctive shorebird. But for the sake of completion, this is a forest dwelling or woodland dwelling shorebird, and crepuscular at the very least. And then if you move to the next one, likewise with our snipe. Snipes are a real mix, but they're very super distinctive with that stripy head and the long straight bill, and all sorts of habitats, including forests and sometimes in wetlands. And some super cool features like both the woodcock and the snipe have modified feathers for making sound with their feathers. So in the woodcock case, it's the primaries that do it. And in the snipe's case, it's the tail feathers. You can just see them a little bit in this photo, and then make what we call a winnowing when they display over territory. All right, if you move on to the next one, a big and chunky species, the red knot, large in breeding plumage with this color pattern. I think they're very distinct. They're trickier otherwise, but you should notice they're big and chunky. There's actually, it's really complicated now. There's actually 5 designatable units, and of which you're going to get 2 or 3 here in Ontario. So if you were looking at a red knot, you might not know if it was endangered or threatened, because depending on which population they are. And that difference there is the ones that go to the Gulf of Mexico versus the ones that go to northern South America versus the ones that go all the way to Tierra del Fuego. And if you move to the next one, ruddy turnstone should be next by size, and ruddy turnstones are super distinctive with that bright red legs and the dagger-like bill that they flip stones with, and the reddish chestnut back. So pretty easy bird to identify there. Next one is the purple sandpiper. I think purples are also fairly distinctive, and we mostly see them in the non-breeding plumages in the late fall and winter. So this is what they look like in that season. Go ahead if you got a question.
Question? No, go ahead.
So it's the orange legs and the orange base to the bill, which is otherwise black and down curved, and that soft purple. Purple's a bit of a generous word, but you can sort of see that color hue. It's a little bit on the purple side. Anyway, these are super tough. They winter as far north as Newfoundland, so they're a remarkably tough shorebird. And in your area, there's some good places to look for them for sure. Quite famous for getting purple sandpipers in your area. So I'm sure people know where to go for them. If you move on, we'll try to quickly cover the phalaropes here. I won't cover the red because it's fairly rare here, but this is the Wilson's, which does show up in the area sometimes. And also the polyandrous. So the male in the lower right is the duller bird, and the female is the brighter bird. A really straight needle-like bill on this one, and then the black line, you probably can't see my mouse, so my movement is focused. This black line that extends down through the face, and then it sort of turns into a chestnut line that then goes down the neck and then onto the back. So that's a really super distinctive mark, and it's also that bill is quite distinctive. And I find phalaropes have a really distinctive shape. If you go to the next one, you also often see phalaropes swimming. So they're, like I said, these ones will, the rednecks will be pelagic in the wintertime. So here's a nice bright female redneck with showing her redneck. A bit smaller sized than Wilson's, a thinner needle-like bill. And the redneck is pretty distinctive. Even on the males, they have some red, although they're not nearly as bright as this. So now listed as special concern under the Species at Risk Act. And then moving on, I'm really trying to make it quick, but I'm not. I'm gonna run out of time. I know it. Solitary sandpiper, quite distinctive. Sometimes people get them confused for yellow legs, but usually that greener yellow of the legs compared to the bright yellow of the yellow legs shouldn't be a problem. Also a bit smaller size. That big white eye ring is quite distinctive as well, and all of the spots on the back. So one to be aware of, but shouldn't pose you too many problems. And the next one that's sort of similar is spotted sandpiper. Spotted sandpiper has the black spots in the breeding plumage, and that's just unique. It's the white belly with black spots like that. Obviously, they don't at other times of year, so it's not the field mark for all year round, but it's a great field mark in this time of year. And then that orange bill with the black tip is another great mark for these birds. Quite distinctive when they fly. If you move to the next one, we'll quickly talk about stilt sandpiper. You can see why shorebirding is fun, because there's actually a lot of different species that can be together in a flock. So the stilt sandpiper with the really striped underparts is also quite unique. And it's got that chestnut crown and chestnut ear coverts and that black down curved bill. So that combination is very distinctive in breeding plumage. Tricky in non-breeding plumage, and they often flock with dowagers. All right, on to the next one. I'm doing my best to move to motor. Apologies for the rush. Dunlin, well, it's really easy. That rich red back, sort of similar to a turnstone, but then the bill is completely different, black and down curved, and then they have the big black belly spot. So Dunlins are easy at this time of year, but they're tough at other times of the year when they become dun. So the Dunlin is a little brown gray bird, right? Dun meaning gray brown, but not when they're in breeding plumage. All right, next is the pectoral sandpiper. We already talked a bit about the pectoral. And the pectoral refers to the way that the breast is marked. So pectoral, of course, from pexus, meaning breast, pectoral meaning referring to that really strongly demarcated breast from the white belly. And it really looks like a sharp line. And that, sometimes a Baird sandpiper will look a bit like that, but there's nothing quite as sharply contrasting as a pectoral. Also, the combination of orange legs with the orange bill with black tip and pectoral, fairly easy to identify. If you move to the next one, I've got to quickly mention buff-breasted. You're looking for these mostly in different habitats. So, I mean, the sort of the onion fields of Point Pelee being a famous one. Very hard to find, and you're mostly finding them in cornfields. So if you go to the next, sorry, not cornfields, wheat fields or stubble fields. If you go to the next slide, just to give you an illustration of that, there's, I usually set this up as a find the bird, spot the bird, but I've run out of time for that. So there's a field. You can easily spot the black-bellied plover in the front, but you might easily completely miss those buff-breasted sandpipers in the stubble field. But they do occur, and actually fall is a better time to look for them than spring. That's because of the difference in migration routes. A lot of birds have a more westerly spring migration and a more easterly fall migration. All right, I got to be super quick, so move on to sanderling. Should be the next slide. So again, with that reddish head, although there's a lot of variation in sanderlings, some look quite red and some don't. So here's a couple of variants. These are both technically breeding plumage. One bird looking more red and the other bird not. But running along the beach in the way they do, and really missing that hind toe or just the stub of a hind toe. So they're unique behavior running along the beach. Also maybe a bit easier in fall, but certainly around in springtime. So look for them there. And all black bill, all black legs, or dark, I should say. And moving on down, it gets trickier and trickier as we get into the peeps. So this is my cheat sheet, sort of golden rule. So there's two that are teeny tiny. That's the least and the semi-palmated on the bottom row. And there's two that are a little bit bigger. They're still tiny, but they're a little bit bigger. That's the Bairds and the white-rumped on the top row. So as you can see how I've done that. And then the way they're grouped on the left-hand side is Bairds and least together. By their color, they're a more golden brown color. And the way that they're grouped on the right-hand side is white-rumped versus semi-palmated. The white-rumped and semi-palmated are more of a gray color. And so that's kind of how I group them. Of course, least sandpipers also have yellow legs. So the yellow legs on the least is a great field mark versus the dark legs on all the others. But the yellow legs could be covered in mud. So just be a little bit careful about that. So probably just run through the next few slides, actually, because I won't cover the peeps individually.
Yeah, so Christian, I think probably at this point, it might be a good idea to move to wrap up. I mean, it would be great.
Yeah, so
have
just
time
run
to cover
through.
everything, but we don't right now.
Yeah, run through them. Just get hit forward. And I'm sorry, you can share the PDF if you want, or keep going, and hopefully we can. All right, we'll leave it. Actually, we'll leave it there. I had some quizzes and stuff at the end, so we can actually just leave it right there.
Okay, so is there something you want to wrap up with, or is there a last slide?
I'm sorry I didn't quite get to going through the peeps individually, but that's fine. And then I didn't get to cover the stilt and the avocet, but they're so rare. That's maybe not a big deal. And then if we had time, I was going to do some quizzes and have some fun and see if you could pick out, like from a photo like this, see how many species you could pick out. And the answer is that number in the top left corner. So you can have some fun with trying to pick out different species, like the black belly of the Dunlin, for example, standing out on this one. But that's it. I will wrap it up there. I do apologize. I might have misjudged the time a little bit. For some reason, I thought we were going to 9:30. I'm not sure if that's my misunderstanding. Probably is.
Okay, thank you, Christian. That was fabulous. I don't know, I'm a little nervous if you had had the exam. I'm not sure how well I would have done, but it would have been fun to try.
Yeah.
Are there any questions from the audience? Any questions on Zoom? Okay, well, thank you so much for sharing all that beautiful photographs, and certainly had no idea of the multitude of shorebirds available to us.
Well, I will say this, you're in a fantastic shorebirding area. You're quite lucky. I moved from Manitoba to Ottawa, and the shorebirding in Manitoba was fantastic, and the shorebirding in Ottawa is not good. It's not good. So you are quite blessed where you are, and you should definitely take advantage of it. It's wonderful. The one thing though is that It's a little bit easier with the scope. Well, it's a lot easier with the scope. Sorting through flux of shorebirds with a scope is a lot of fun, and you can even bring a little chair and sit down when you do it. And it's actually quite fun too for finding rarities. So I would strongly encourage you to try to learn your shorebirds and get out there.
Okay, well, please come and visit us anytime.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, it's more fun to do it in the flesh and see the birds together. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Our next meeting, oh, sorry.
Before you do that, just something we want to do. That's gonna come up and say a couple things.
Oh, okay. Here, I told you you didn't have to talk, Matt.
I'll make it quick. So, well, thank you, Whitney, for being our president for 2 years. So, we, the club and the board decided to get you a goodie here for all your hard work, and
Thank you very
there
much.
you go.
Thank you. Thank you. You can take it away then, since you're here.
Take it away. Oh.
No pressure, next
I
meeting.
can't remember where you left off here.
Next
Next meeting, okay, Friday, March 28th would be our next meeting, and our topic would be Elvards, a globally significant habitat right next door. If anyone here has ever been to one of them, they're pretty interesting ecosystems. It's like an open grassland with a concrete floor almost. It's a good one at Cardin, north of the Kawarthas, and then there's another one in the Napanee area. They're very interesting, a lot of unique plants and wildlife found in those, so you don't want to miss that. And then our next outing would be the Canoe Museum one, as mentioned previously. That's on Tuesday, March 4th at 10 a.m. And if you haven't already, please renew your membership.
Well done. Paper. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mary. Sure, thank you.